Welcome to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Java Skills series. In this video, we're going to talk about conditional statements. But before we get started, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the like button. And class is now in session. All right, conditional statements, you will also hear them as if-else statements or if-then, depending on where you are, but they are pretty much the same thing. So with conditional statements, I'd like to first just talk about how they're used in the real world, and I'm going to just use this Pac-Man game to demonstrate that conditional statements are all over the place. So let's take a look. This is just Pac-Man, just a screenshot, but I'm going to go into the game and I'm going to play, and I'm just going to show you some of the things that where you would see a conditional statement. So right now, as I'm eating the pills, okay, there's probably some sort of conditional statement managing the pills, saying, hey, if you touch a pill, give me 50 points, right? If you eat a ghost, get 200 points. If you've already eaten a few, the score goes up. Even as I'm navigating, I'm using the arrow buttons, right? And if I go up, right, move the character up. If I move the arrow to the arrow button, if I move it down, it's gonna move one way. Now I'm gonna go ahead and end this, but watch what happens if the character touches me. So there's a series of things that happen in that moment, right? I'm eating, there's a sound that plays, and then we start over. And so those are all based on certain conditions. Not sure what the programming is behind here, but pretty sure that there's some sort of conditional statement in there. All right, now let's switch back to the code. So I'm going to create what's called just a skeleton, and this is the general skeleton. All right, and I'm going to break down the parts here. Now I'm going to bring these curly brackets down here just to kind of show you the general breakdown of a conditional statement. So in here is where we put our Boolean expression, which I'll talk about in a second. And this is the do something. So right now I'm just going to put do something. Okay. So if this evaluates to true, we're going to do something. So let's add a couple of other parts here. So I'm just going to, now this is not particularly a part of the conditional statement. It's not necessary. But I'm just going to do this just to fill out this scenario. So I'm going to say x is equal to 0, and it's an int. I'm going to say y is equal to 1. And actually, we're going to let's actually make these equal just for example's sake. So they're both equal to each other, and I'm going to do the Boolean expression, and this is what we put inside of here. So if you remember from my previous video, the Boolean expression evaluates either true or false. So if this part is false, the do something part is not going to run. The only time this is going to run if this is true. So I'm going to say is x equal to y. Now we're going to get an error here, but let's just run and see what the problem is, because this kind of looks like it should make sense, right? If x is equal to y, which is true, they're both equal to, but let's see what happens. And if you notice, we get an error because we are using the assignment operator. It says it cannot be converted to a Boolean. What that means is that this is not what we want. We actually want to use the comparison operator. So the comparison operator is equals equals. This is a very common mistake with beginners. So just be careful about that. So you have to use the comparison operator. We use the equal sign when we want to assign a value. In this case, we're not assigning a value. We want to evaluate whether this is true or false. So this is going to be true, and we're going to have this run. So in order for us to get some feedback, I need to put a statement in here. So I'm going to say system.out.println, and I'm just going to put here as true. And I'm going to end with my semicolon, and looks like everything is good. And now we're going to run. And we get printed. We get true that's printed, and that's because this is actually true. Now, there's a couple of things we could do here to kind of show you some other examples. Let me take this out. I'm just going to comment these out for now. And I'm going to do, I'm just going to put true here. See what happens here. So what I'm saying here is that this is just true. So it's always going to run. This is not really a good practice, but I just wanted to show you that this, if this is true or false, if it's true, this is going to run. If it's false, it's not going to run. I can also do something like this. So I could say, I could actually make a Boolean, and I could say present, and I can just set that value to true. And so now, instead of doing any kind of like formal Boolean expression, I'm just going to put present. Okay, so basically present is true, and so we should run this, and we should get this. This would execute. And we get true. All right, now let's come back. All right, let's come back to this. Let's just get rid of this. And I'm just going to keep these for now. And I'm going to make this false. So I'm going to say x equals, so that, and then we're just going to make this false. All right, now we're going to have an issue here. Sometimes you may think you get an error, but you're not going to get an error. In this case, since this is not true, it's not going to run. So what we have is a case where we have x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 2. And so if you see, this is not a true statement, so it's not going to run. And if you notice over here, we don't get any feedback here. So it's good practice to include the else statement, because we want to have some feedback in this case. It may not fit every scenario, but we're going to have some feedback. So we want to have some feedback. So I'm going to put an else. And the way you do an else is you just do else, and you do your opening and closing curly brackets. Now, in this case, we're just going to do something simple. So I'm just going to do this, and we're going to print false. All right, so now we're going to get feedback either way. If this is true, do this, else do this. So let's see what runs here. So I'm going to go ahead and run. And this x is equal to y, or we're comparing x to y, and we're going to get false because this is not a true statement. So this just goes to prove that that this statement, if it's not true, this will run. All right. So that is the else statement. But there are a couple of scenarios where we may want to test a number of conditions. And so we're going to do that with another statement. And that statement is an if-else. I'm sorry, an else-if. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to test. We're going to say else if. And we're going to test another condition. All right, and I'm just going to do the skeleton right now. And so the way this works is that it's going to test this condition. If this condition is not true, it's going to move to this condition. And it's going to do whatever this is if it's true. But if it's not, it's going to go here. So this is more of this else statement can be a catch-all statement. All right, so I am going to just add another variable. And I'm going to say z. And I'm going to make that 3. All right, so we're going to make this statement true right here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to put this inside of here, and we're going to say true, but we're going to say, I'm just going to make this the else if version so we know which one we're printing. And so the condition we want to test is x. Let's say we want it to be true, so is x less than z? All right, so is x less than z? Let's print this out. And since this case is true, it is going to print true else if. All right, so that is the else if condition. Now let's do another one. We can do several of these. Okay, we can test several conditions. It's going to come right down the line, and it will test these conditions. All right, so I'm going to just move these over. And this time let's make this false. So I'm going to make this one false. Okay, but we're going to make this one true, and I'm going to say second. We're going to make this the second else if statement, and we're going to make this true. We can keep it, but let's just do something. Let me see. Is y. So is y less than z. So we're testing this condition here. So we're going to go ahead and print. Let me go ahead and clear this, and then we'll print. So again, the flow is it tests, is this true? If it's not, it goes to the else if. And if not, it goes to the else if. And if not, it goes to the false or the else statement. And so in this case, we get true, second, else if, which is here. Now let's make this one false. And then what do you think is going to print out? So I'm going to make this false. So now all of these statements are false. And we should get this statement. So we get false. Okay. So that is the kind of the basics of a conditional statement. Now I do want to talk about one other item here. And before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and put these if-else statements and the else statements in just in a multi-line comment. So I'm just going to throw this in here. So right now, this is the only code that's going to run. And this is what I want to talk about. This, in this case, so I'm just going to get rid of the comment as well. So we only have one line here. All right. So whenever you have one line, you don't need the opening and closing curly brackets. So you only need one line of code. I'm sorry. So you don't need the curly brackets if you have one line of code. So in this case, we need to make this run. So let's just, we're going to set this to 2. So these are now equal, and this is going to run. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this should evaluate to true because X is basically equal to Y. So we get true. Now, this works with only one line of code, but let's say that I had another line here and I wanted to run it. Let's see what happens. All right, so we do get true and this runs and we don't get an error or anything, but we have to remember that this is actually not part of, this line 12 is not part of the code or of the conditional statement. This is its own line. So this is going to run regardless if whatever happens in here. And so to prove that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make this not equals. So now X is not equal to Y, which is true. So we're going to run this statement here. Now let's watch what happens. And you notice we get true, and this is the second true. And just to prove it, let me just put this here. Let's run it again, and we should get this second true. All right, so we know which one is running. In this case, this is not a true statement. It does not evaluate the true, and so it executes this. So just an important reminder that this only works. This will only work if you have one line of code. This is not part of the conditional statement. So if we wanted to run both of these lines of code, we're going to have to put in our opening and curly brackets, and then both of these will run and they will be considered part of the conditional statement. All right, that concludes the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video where we're going to talk about compound Boolean expressions. Class is now dismissed.